What's up, Bridge Nation? We're back with another video. Right now, we're going to talk about the fantasy playoffs that are upcoming. It is that time of the year where you're going to have to make some tough decisions. Let's get it going.
Yeah, let's start with slide 2. And first off, if you're watching this video, hopefully you've made the fantasy playoffs. So congratulations. If you haven't, well,
Why are
thanks
you
for
watching?
watching.
Why are you watching?
Yeah, I don't know why you're here, but
But
anyway,
leave the video running. Whatever.
yeah,
We're
leave
here.
the video running and help the boys out. You're here. But we'll start off with the Western Conference. So it's kind of hard for us to say what the best team is going to be for your fantasy playoffs because, it's a range of when fantasy playoffs starts from league to league. Our playoffs starts in week 19. We like to start our playoffs earlier so we can kind of minimize the amount of games we're going to see teams tanking, which kind of hurts towards the end of the fantasy season. So for week 19, for example, for us, Blazers start off with 2 games, and then the next weeks they only play 3 games. That kind of sucks versus the team like the Rockets who have 4 games in each of those weeks. So take a look at this here. Maybe consider trading some players, try to target some guys who are going to get you more games. Like if you have someone like Jalen Green on the Rockets versus someone like Yusuf Nurkic on the Trailblazers, if someone's playing 4 games, they're just going to get you more points. Just simple as that. But yeah, anything to add to the Western Conference, guys?
No, I think that's fair. The Blazers definitely looking like the weakest team there. And if you have like one of their
Yeah.
if you have any even a player that's starting on the Blazers, I would be looking to move them.
Honestly, though, like if you don't start fantasy playoffs till week 21 and you have Blazers guys, then they have 4 games all the way through, which is pretty sick. So
Yeah.
it's very situational. But we'll take a look at the Eastern Conference here then. Um, the team that jumps out to me pretty early on here is the Toronto Raptors. They have a 5 game week, which is pretty rare to see in week 19 when we're doing our fantasy playoffs. And getting past that first round, fantasy can be a big deal, but we'll have it here. Take a look at it. Consider adding, dropping players, making some trades based on what you see here for your league.
Yeah, pretty much. One thing with the Raptors, they have been playing most of their starters heavy minutes. So I think if they're playing 5 games in that week, I haven't looked, but there should be at least one back to back.
Probably 2 back-to-backs. Yeah.
Probably 2 back-to-backs. So it is one of those things, right, where they do have 5 games, but will you be in all 5 of those games? Just something to think about a little bit.
For sure.
Adding on to Alex's point there, like Raptors don't have much depth in their team. So if their bench is playing, because we're hoping that like only their bench players are available in your fantasy league, or we're assuming that they're not going to play a lot. They'll probably do it when they're getting blown out or they have a heavy lead. So their job is just going to be run on the clock. So,
Yeah.
wait situation.
Maybe you can finesse someone, trade someone, like Norman Powell for Scotty Barnes. Stuff happens. You can put yourself in good situations. Anyways,
We'll
we'll
move on to the big picture stuff. What to do with your team at this point? Because first couple weeks or middle of the season, when of the regular season of fantasy basketball, you might be looking like, yeah, I got Zion on my roster. Like he might come back. I'll hold on to him, kind of thing. And you have the IL spot, no harm, no foul. But we're going into the playoffs, uh, and fantasy playoffs, and like if you have Zion on your team, and very unclear timeline, very secretive timeline, or Norman Powell just broke his foot. Couple other players are dropping left and right. If you have those players on your injury list, read up on them. If they're like out for the season kind of thing, drop them because you're going into fantasy leagues, fantasy weeks where your players that are healthy might go down to IL, and you need to make that quick move of moving them to IL, picking up a player from free agent. We're going to talk about that, but again, if it's a long-term injury, drop that player. We're at the time where like it's not investment anymore. There are 4 or 5 weeks left of fantasy basketball, and every week counts more because you can't just be like, I'll lose this week, he'll be back next week. You have
Yeah.
to win every week.
Yeah, it's worth cutting ties on some players. I know in some leagues, some people look at guys they call league winners. They'll talk about guys who are like injured or just kind of coming back or in a new situation where they break out all of a sudden and carry your team through the fantasy playoffs. I think a point to kind of extend on what Batu was saying, I think Alex made this point earlier, is that if you're in a fantasy league, don't be afraid to drop anyone on your roster if you need to go chase the win in a playoff matchup. If you have, if you're in the very final matchup and Giannis is done playing his games for the week, get Giannis off your team, man. Like most leagues, you probably can't drop Giannis, but just as an example for things like that, like if it's time to cut ties with players, like if you're in a close matchup and you need to add someone to go chase the win, that's what you do. Like that's how you're gonna push yourself ahead in fantasy playoffs. At the same time, like it's good to look ahead to the next matchup. If you can avoid dropping someone, if you're in a safe position, hold on to them.
One of the out situation is always funny because they can be out for less than 13 hours, and next thing you know, the player is starting and you have them benched, kind of thing. You have to like today I benched Şengün for no reason. Bad mistake. He had a 45 fantasy point game. That's a noof. Like I'm still winning this week, but playoffs cannot do those mistakes. I would just be on your team as like a hawk, unless it says out, broken foot. Like yeah, probably that guy's not coming back that day. But if it's out, illness or like non-COVID illness, that guy might come back later that day. So just make sure you're not lacking. Follow your team. Don't trust the out sign.
For sure. For waiver ads, I guess that's kind of our final point here. So, we'll probably continue making our weekly ads videos throughout the playoffs. So if you want to come back and subscribe to the channel and see some recommendations on a week-to-week basis of, the different situations that teams are presenting with, we'll be able to help you out there. Generally speaking, though, I think the main thing to look at with waiver ads when you're considering it, look at how many games the teams are playing and also the timing of those games. Are they playing, a lot of games on the weekend, have a back-to-back on Saturday and Sunday? Things like that can really help you, push your matchup in your weeks as your timing when you add players. But yeah, that's about all I have to say on this one. So any final points from you guys?
I think that covers it.
I'd say with waiver ads, be a little aggressive. If you have game time decision or outs, like we said, and you have that IL plus spot, use that IL plus spot without permanently dropping your player. Add anybody who has a game that day. Like it will end up counting 10, 15, 20 points. Maybe they go off and 30 fantasy point. Like take those risks. Be a little more aggressive. That's like the final thing I'll say.
For sure. Well, thanks for watching this video, guys. Yeah, we'll hopefully see you in another one.